This one, it says, given that there was no separation of church and state in the ancient world, how do we understand this today, this idea Jesus is Lord from Romans 10:9?
Yeah, sure. I think a lot of people misunderstand the separation of church and state today. They understand it to be the fact that if you get those opinions of yours from the Bible, well, you can't impose that on me. Who are you to impose that on me? Well, that raises the question, well, where do you get your opinions? What idolatrous temple do you worship in? Why should I listen to you? That is not what the separation of church and state is in the Bible. It's not about where we get our opinions from. Okay? It's the fact that they come from this book or not. That's not the point. The separation of church and state in Scripture, as I understand it, is about the fact that God is authorized, it's about jurisdiction, and the fact that God has authorized the state to do one thing, do justice, and He's authorized the church to do another thing. Think about Jesus for a second when He says, render to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. Is He saying you got Caesar's things and God's things, as if those are separate circles? Well, no, He's not. He's not saying that at all. What is Caesar not under God? In fact, think about the context for a second. Sorry. He says, bring me a coin. Whose image is on it? Whose inscription? Caesar's, they said. And every Jew sitting there would have known that Caesar himself is in whose image? God's. So what Jesus actually gives us is a big circle, God's things, and inside of that, a smaller circle, Caesar's things. Which is to say, in a democratic republic like ours, when we enter Caesar's circle as voters or juries or whatever, congressmen, God is still king. It's His understanding of justice and righteousness that we're called to bring to bear, right? It's either His version of justice or some false god's version of justice. There's no neutral justice, that applies to everybody. That's not God's. It's one or the other. Gods are false gods. So we're looking to bring, in that little circle, Caesar's circle, we're looking to bring God's justice to bear. What we're not looking to do is to bring all the things of the church. We're just looking to bring a very narrow lane of justice. What's that? Genesis 9, whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, for man was made in God's own image. So we're looking, inside of Caesar's circle, we're looking to protect human life and dignity and affirm that all people are created in God's image. So anything that threatens human life, human dignity, well, I think that's Caesar's prerogative. And you and I might have disagreements about whether or not this goes in Caesar's circle or not. What about math standards for 8th graders? Well, we can have a conversation about that. Is making national standards for math for 8th graders part of protecting human dignity and life? I can see how some Christians will say yes, some will say no. What about Federal Aviation Authority regulations on airline construction? Maybe, insofar as that's keeping planes safe. You look at third world, you look at a list of the top airline crashes in the last 20, 30 years, and sad to say, do you know where most of those major airline crashes occur? Well, they occur mostly in third world countries. It's not happening on the whole in your European, first world, or American countries. Why? Well, because government in these nations do a good job of making sure that airplanes are safe. They are protecting human lives. So I personally am happy to say the Federal Aviation Authority fits inside of Caesar's circle. Right? Some of you may not think so. Okay, what about insisting that Jesus is Lord? Does that fit inside of Caesar's circle? I don't think it does. Nowhere does God give government authority to prosecute, criminalize blasphemers. The nation of Israel is an exception, but the nations are never given authority to prosecute false worship, false gods. So I'm an advocate from Scripture of religious freedom. How do I get there? Again, I understand God has given one authority to the state. He's given another authority to the church. And so we need to pay attention to that.